Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily Live with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning, where he's been reading through his 199 links to the Sheva Mitzvot, which is just really applicable. I find yesterday he did a great job at explaining some of the points in their connections a little bit, but what I like best is that it's got the scripture connection there, so it's very, very useful for study purposes. So let's just zoom right in. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. How are you? I got Ronald up on the screen.
Yes, you do. Ronald's beside you and me, and how you doing, Dan, and everybody else? Uh,
Good, you're live. We're going to turn it over to you, sir.
okay, and I got to share screen. I'm going to share the screen with the chart that we're working on, and but I have to go back up a little bit here. I think we got up to here. Last time we were talking about these are 26 to 38 examples of blasphemy via yes, Shatnez, right. So 35. So Shatnez is wool and linen together. The word Shatnez itself is a mixture of two words um, that sort of illustrates what's being spoken about. And there's all kinds of theories or proposals as to why God forbade the wearing of linen and wool together in a mixture in one garment. Um, and um, and that's fine. You can learn things out of it, but the fact is, it is more or less a sort of a just a laid down rule, and that we had best take note of because apparently it's not good for us. Otherwise, God wouldn't have bothered. So that's and when wool and linen is put into the same garment, woven in together. So that is something that we don't wear now. I must say that you don't you don't have to like you're just abstaining from wearing it, right? It's not something you have to do. So that's why I included as something that non-Jews can also take it if they because the idea is that God said don't do this, and then you say no, I'm going to do it. That's basically something you don't understand. You say, well, I'm not going to pay attention to that. Is if you're arguing with God. Some others would say you're the very idea of mixing two things that are natural, the wool on one hand, which stands for the animal products, and the linen, which stands for plant life, mixing those two is an act of mixing like we had with a seed mixture or crossbreeding animals. It's of the same category, and you can propose that. It doesn't. It's not exact, so I would say that we can't really explain exactly why. Synthetics are okay. It's just wool and linen. Synthetics, if you mix wool with a synthetic, that's fine. If you're mixing linen with a synthetic, that's fine. It's only when you're um, the two together, the those two, uh, those ideas. If it's all wool or all linen, that's fine. So, and then there's some other rules that sort of surround that that we get into with the tzitzis. That we'll get a little later. But just straight, when um, it could be inadvertent. You have to be careful. So if someone, not I, even if I didn't put it in together, but because the prohibition is not the putting in, it's the wearing. So it's not a sin or prohibited to put the two together in a garment. It's prohibited to wear the garment if you're a regular Jew. By the way, interestingly, another interesting wrinkle to this, if you know, pardon the pun on the word wrinkle, but is that the particular clothes that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, had to wear in the temple when he was performing the service necessarily had shatnez in it. So I remember my rabbi mentioned, he says, apparently it is, it elevates his holiness, but it would be harmful to us. You have things like that where if you take certain people take a medication, but in other people, if they took the medication, would be harmful. So that idea seems to be prevalent in this idea of shanas. But I can't say that you're disobeying God if you're not Jewish and you wear shanas, because it's not clear that it was given to everybody. It could have been only to the Jewish people, but you see that it has some kind of negative effect. And so, um, if someone's going to wear shanas because they don't see, they don't feel that they're caught by it, that's fine. But if somebody's going to wear shanas and say, "I'll show God that that He doesn't know what He's talking about," so that would be blasphemous. And so it depends, as in many other things, on your intent when you do something. So it's certainly an act of reverence to stay away from it. If God said that, I'll take care of it. Maybe I don't understand why, but I'm going to stay away from it. That would certainly be a positive um, behavior. So 36, do not eat of the first 3 years, fruit of the first 3 years of a tree. That's it's called Orla. It's stopped up the first 3 years. They're not the best products of the fruit. The tree has to mature a little more, but that's not the reason. The reason is God said don't eat from the first 3 years, so we don't eat from the first 3 years. And again, same idea. If you're going to say if well, it may not apply to me. I may not have to abide by that, and I like the first 3 years, or it's too much of a money loss for me if I grow it, so on. I don't use it. That's one thing. But if you say, no, I'm just going to ignore that, that's a silly thing. God doesn't know what he's talking about. So that would be the other side of the coin. So that would be a blasphemous act. So that's why I've included that idea that there is something God said. Everything God said has a reason. It has something, and we know that we're not going to understand everything. So be cautious. Depends on your attitude towards how you follow it or not.
Can
Uh,
my animals eat it?
Yes, animals are not. We don't govern the animals in that way. Um,
Okay.
maybe that's the idea, is that leave it for them. I don't know. Number 37, do not castrate animals or men. Well, that's obvious that God created uh, males with the ability to procreate, and to stop that from him is God particularly said to give the blessing of being fruitful and multiply to all the animals, to mankind. So to work against that is obviously an act of defiance of God. Today, it's become very contentious because of the let's say a vasectomy. Is a vasectomy a violation of that idea? I mean, you haven't removed the testicles, but you've severed the things. So certainly it is a I know I have a story of a fellow who he had a vasectomy. He wasn't Jewish, and he converted. He wanted to convert. So fine, you can convert, no problem. But then he wanted to marry a Jewish woman. And so the problem there was, no, you can't have someone who was castrated. That one of the prohibitions. So it's another mitzvah that someone, in addition to not doing it, but then you're not allowed to marry a woman, um, uh, presumably so that she should be able to bear children. But for whatever reason, you're not allowed to marry a woman if you're castrated. So was he allowed to marry the woman if he had a vasectomy? So they went to a big rabbi, a big expert, and they went to a doctor, and the doctor said it's possible to reverse it. It's not guaranteed, but it's possible. So he said, so do the procedure to reverse it, and don't examine whether it was reversed or not, and then you'll be allowed to get married. So that's you go to an expert, and they'll tell you what the parameters of the mitzvah is. But that was the thing that stuck in my mind from that idea. But you'd see that the idea of denying God's plan of being fruitful is wrapped up in that mitzvah. As is the
Well,
next one. Sorry.
I've seen some discussion on this sort of the castration thing or desexing of animals, because most of us have our local council laws where our dogs and cats have to be. But aside from that, there's been discussion that Noahides can do it, but Jewish people can't. So if a Jewish person wants an animal castrated, they sell it to a Noahide. The Noahide gets it castrated, then they sell it back to the Jewish person to alleviate not breaking the law, and which is clean in one way, but sort of immoral in another.
Okay, so that brings up to my mind, that brings up the plot of A Man for All Seasons, a play by Robert Bolt that was made into a movie, which I studied in high school. Yeah, and very interesting, where very God-fearing man, Sir Thomas More, and he didn't want to make a lie or take out a false oath and so on. He was being asked to take an oath to the king, and he didn't want to do it because he didn't believe in it, in what the king was doing. So instead, he said silent, and silent is like acquiescence. So the king wanted him to swear or to take the oath, and he argued that my silence is the same, but at least I don't have to take a false oath. So and he wound up being beheaded for that stance. But what he was doing was he was manipulating the law, because by staying silent, he was saying it's like I took the oath. So people, the general population, are going to think that I agree with what the king is doing, but at least I don't have to take a false oath. So I'm within the letter of the law, if not the spirit, and that's okay, because God knows how to write a law. He knows how to get its spirit and how to get the law exactly what he wants. So if this is the way God wrote the law, so sometimes you don't have to sacrifice the greater good in order to stay within the spirit. You can stay within the letter of the law. There's that allowance. So what you're describing is a similar idea, is that Jews are not allowed to castrate the animals, but non-Jews, yes. So if a Jew wants to have the animal, they have to be castrated, so you give it over and you work around it like that. Could be. I don't know enough details about it. But it would seem to me that the whole law in the first place is mistaken. If you've got two animals, kill them. Don't castrate them, kill them. There's nothing you can control your animal population, but by castrating them, you're maybe doing it the wrong way. Face the problem. If you have the right to control the animal population, they're there for you. You can enslave them, you can make them work for you, you can use them to test medical things and so on. And if necessary, if they have pain, you don't want to be cruel just for the sake of cruelty. But if you have to give pain to someone, just like when you have to give pain to a human when you're trying to train them to do something, you have to give them hard work or whatever, or punishment. So that's just the way things work. So the same thing here. If you have to correct a population explosion, you have to, what's it called? Culling the herd. So yeah, so that's you can do that, but not through this. That's not God's way, shall we say. That may be the position of the Torah. But I'm just presenting the ideas here. I'm not going into all the details because I didn't want to just.
Yeah.
Well, and there'll be more and detailed debates. So in other words, does this apply or does that apply? And we follow the halacha, whatever the final decisions are of the experts, and that's what you do. Just like sometimes we were studying this morning, a very interesting case. There was two conjoined twins that were born, and there was one heart and two heads and so on. So there was two personalities, two lives, but they were conjoined. They were sharing organs, and they could not survive that way. The doctors knew they could not survive that way, and they were Jewish kids. So they were. So the parents There was a non-Jewish doctor, head of the sick kids in Philadelphia, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, famous institution, and he was working on it, and they brought in Rav Moshe Feinstein, and this man said Rav Moshe Feinstein. He learned about him. He said he's the one to make the decision. I'll go with what he decides, and so they went back and forth. And Rav Moshe Feinstein fasted. He went through personal penance to try and make the right decision. And in the end, he decided to, because they had to either kill one of the kids. If they let them alone, they were going to both die. If they would kill one of them, the other one could survive. Not guaranteed, but could. So in the end, he decided that yes, you should kill one in order to save the other, which is what they did. The one that lived, unfortunately died, but not from the operation or from the results of the operation, not directly, but a blood transfusion unfortunately introduced hepatitis into the system, and they were too weak to overcome that, and so they died from that. But so there was, just they lost both, but they were going to lose both anyways. But this way, they had a chance. But you have a whole bunch of rules in the medical decisions. The doctors have to decide: can we do this? Can we do that? How do we do it? And then the halacha also. What do you do? Can you have a life in front of you? Are you allowed to end it for the sake of another life? Famous quandary. Okay. So 38, do not destroy a fruit-bearing tree. A regular tree you can cut down, but if it's a fruit-bearing tree, you shouldn't cut it down. But there are exceptions, there's very mitigating circumstances, but in the norm, you should not cut down a fruit-bearing tree. And that, by the way, is stated in conjunction with when you're making war on an enemy and there's a tree there that bears fruit, do not cut it down. To use, I think it's the simple meaning is to use its wood, as a battering ram or something like that. Look, it's a fruit bearing tree, so don't take that away. Go find some other tree. So that's one of the things. And then if somebody says, "No, I'm not going to listen to that," I know better. But there are, in this case, it would be there are reasons given and mitigating circumstances which allow the cutting down. So you'd have to look at the details there. So that's the end of that section. And now we come to a set of things that are rituals that I feel embed divine sparks in one's character. And so they're worth considering, even if, say, it wouldn't be considered a sin to not do them, but it would be considered a positive aspect to do them, based on the idea that, hey, this, God says this is going to work for you, so let me try it too. I certainly hope, even if it doesn't work, it should do something. It's not going to harm me. So the first one is say Shema morning and evening. Now the Shema is 3 paragraphs, and there's actually whole discussion among the experts. Maybe, sorry, I'm going to. There it is up there. Say the Shema morning and evening. I'm going to change the share here to another screen. Try this. I have it up here. No, this thing right here. I looked up some images. So here, Shema Yisrael, hear Israel, or listen Israel, and the full line is, I'll have there's 3 paragraphs. Here's where I'll call it this one. If I it might be, but yeah, there's the 3 paragraphs. So they're not. They'll sing it for you. You can look up on them about nothing. But what I wanted to point out to you is that the first line says, "Listen, Israel, God is our Lord, God is one." And then it goes on to talk about the love of God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. And these things should be on your heart all day, or that I command you should be on your heart. You should teach them to your children, speak of them when you lay down, when you rise up. And those are actually the words that command us or instruct us to say the Shema. When we lay down, that's the evening, and when we get up, that's in the morning. When we go out on a journey, I'm sorry. It's here it is. When you lay down and when you rise, and tie them for a sign on your hands, and let them be a signpost between your eyes, and write them on the doorposts of your house and your gates. And those are the mezuzahs, which we're going to get to in a minute. So let me go back here to this one. Well, sorry. Oh, which one here? Okay. So there's a number of features here. There's God's name here. This is the Tetragrammaton, as it's called in short form, Yud Yud, the word for God, for the eternal. And this is another name of God, and then there's the eternal again. So there's three names of God in the one verse, and then there's three other words. So they balance each other out. There's a balance of the threes. The first letter of the Shema is itself signifying three, because it has three branches, as you can see from the base coming up. And the letter that it does that, called the letter Shin, is the number of it is 300. So not only does it have three branches coming up, but it has the numeric of hundreds of threes. There's all kinds of hidden messages in this, but the main one is that you're proclaiming your idea, your proclamation, that God is our Lord, God is one. There's one God, and He's in charge of us. And then you speak about loving God. The next paragraph, very similar to the first paragraph, loving God, talks about the mezuzah, talks about the tefillin, adds a little more in between about performing all the other instructions, etc. They're going to be rewarded or punished, etc. But the main features are the things to do are the same as the first paragraph. And then the third paragraph talks in the main about the mitzvah of tzitzis, of the fringes. So we get to that. So look, there's three paragraphs, and there's three names of God, and there's three other words here. And there is, this is actually, by the way, there's so many, there's a lot of threes here. There's this whole thing here is one paragraph. The reason it's split up is because this line here does not appear in the Torah. This appears in Deuteronomy 6 for a few paragraphs. So this is another paragraph in Deuteronomy, and this is a paragraph in Numbers. So they're not contiguous in the Torah, but the rabbis knew that these were the three paragraphs to put together. But interestingly, the first paragraph is itself split into three: the one line, and then the last paragraph, and the intermittent, what's the word I'm looking for? The interrupting line, and that doesn't appear in the Torah. So, but by printing it here, it breaks it into three parts: the first line, the interruption, and then the rest of the paragraph. So that is another feature of the Trinity, that not the Christian Trinity, but there is a Trinity that Jews have become very familiar with. If nothing else, just a repetition of three of God's names. And we say this, actually, the Torah says to say it twice: once in the evening when you go to bed, or before you go to bed, and once in the morning. We say it three times. Became accustomed to say it three times because we say it in the evening, in the evening services, which is the beginning of the evening usually, and then just before we go to bed, we say the thing again. So we've made it a threesome again, and there's even more threes, which I'll get to. I'll get to that when we get to tzitzis. Let me go back to my list here. What is it? Yeah, here. Is there something else? I wanted to also point out that this is the way the letter is written in the Torah, where it's not a solid base at the bottom, but like over there, but it comes to a point here, which means that it is like three branches coming from one point. So there's a lot of visual imagery in the way it's written, and audio imagery in the way it's said, etc. Related to a Jewish Trinity. Let me go back to the list. So what gives this the themes that are spoken about in the Shema are beneficial to us to be reminded. One of the things I say to people is that the last word echad means one, but it has three meanings itself. One, it means that God is harmonious, which means everything He creates is in harmony. It all fits into a plan. So if you ever feel you're at a place that you don't fit in, don't even let that thought enter your mind, or it will. We feel it. I don't belong here. I'm a mistake, or this is a mistake, but it's not a mistake, and you do fit in, and you have to remind yourself about that all the time because it's so easy to get that feeling. So that's a start, but it doesn't work so fast. You still get that nagging feeling, and so there's another meaning to the word one that you have to remind yourself, and that is unique. That God is unique, and you're unique. You're a unique human being, and so the feeling that you have that you don't quite fit in is no wonder, because you're unique. So you have to find your unique place where you fit in. It's not going to just fall into place for you. You have a job to do to find the unique role that you have to play, and you can find it. But it's a work. It's a job. It's not. It's not a plaything. So you have to remind yourself about that, because that's a hard job, and you don't easily get it done. And so it's a good thing to remind yourself every day about that. And then finally, and this is a key, one means alone. God is alone. And in this case, we're not like God. We cannot operate alone. We know that. We need civilization. We need to be in a city. We need to be with people. We need other people to do things with us. We can do things together. We can accomplish a lot. Alone, not too much. So don't try and do it alone. That's the message. You're in harmony. You're part of the story. You're unique. You have a unique role to play. But don't try and do it alone. Only God is alone. You cannot work alone. You have to find partners. You have to find friends. You have to find help. And you can, but you have to find it. You have to work at it. So, and again, this is like serious stuff, not easy stuff. So it's very beneficial to remind yourself about this morning and night, all day, like several times. And that will help you in that when you approach the task that way, with those meanings and others, when you study the whole thing in detail, so that that's a blessing, because it's a really positive thing. Doesn't take long to say, but you get used to these thoughts, but you just remind yourself, and it's just it's like a tool you have in your kit that helps you so much. So that is the mitzvah of Shema. The next mitzvah is to put the mezuzah on the doorways, and because we said the Shema, we're out of time now, but I'll just say the mezuzah is not the ornament that's affixed to the doorway. It's the parchment that's inside that ornament. That's what the mezuzah is. And on that parchment is written the first two paragraphs of the Shema that more or less say the same thing. But there's two paragraphs that are written the same thing, the way they're written in the Torah with a scribe in certain letters on a parchment, which is part of an animal skin that's been processed, and it has to be done that way, and then it's rolled up in a certain way, and it has to be placed on the doorway, on the top third of the doorway, and on the right going in. I mean, there's all kinds of details with it that each one has a little message with it. But again, basically, you're entering into a room. You're entering into a room that's marked by God's presence. So behave yourself. Remind yourself that you're always there. God's always there. He's watching over you. This is the same doorpost that they put the blood on coming into Passover. So that night before the slaying of the firstborn, they put blood on the two doorposts and the lintel to signify it was a Jewish home, so that the angel of death passed over and nobody died in that house. As the first level of the story goes, and so this is also a reminder to that God's watchful eye. So that's obviously another thing. Now, quite a few things to say about the next one, so we're going to do that tomorrow night. Fringes.
Right. So tomorrow, you're good for tomorrow, like we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, we'll be good
tonight. All right, so Rabbi,
night.
Ronald, we're on for tomorrow. We're going to continue going through these mitzvot. Excellent stuff, Rabbi. I appreciate you giving some commentary on them. I appreciate the list as reference.
Let you look it up yourself. I want people to study it themselves. You have to look at the material and then ask questions, and you'll become a wise man.
It's important for sure. Yeah, that's the only way. I love how you mentioned this segment 39 to 50, that it embeds sparks of holiness.
Yes,
a very unique way to put it, but beautiful for sure.
Good, thank you.
All right, so we're going to sign out for now, and we will be back tomorrow with the Zoom Daily. After that, I think the rabbi's got to take the time off for Passover until after the holidays, and but we will be back tomorrow, same time, Zoom Daily with Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. Till then, have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Right.